Hey, it's Rebecca Rutherford. Welcome to the What in the Well podcast. My friend Angie Huber and I are here to provide an entertaining and relatable perspective on well-being. If you want to shift your mindset and make incremental progress toward your work and home life goals, you are in the right place.
So overlove the plant, huh?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the story. So I am a botanist, I am not, right? I have a thumb that is not green. So as I was experimenting with all kinds of new career paths in college, I decided to buy a bamboo plant because
Yep.
I had heard they were virtually unkillable. And I watered it and I loved on it and I created a relationship with it. I think I named it Clifford. And then within a few months, it was dead. And it was a blow to my plant loving
Your
self-esteem,
botany
my
career.
botany dreams. So what I learned though, when I went to take Clifford out and throw him away, was that I had over loved him and given him too much water because I thought I'm going to do this, I'm going to feed him, I'm going to love on him. And I killed him because the bottom of it was all moldy. Like there was no way he could survive in that environment. So that was a huge life lesson for me on overloving.
Overloving. Yeah. And what did you learn from that?
So, I mean, metaphorically, I feel like sometimes, I mean, maybe it's maybe the lesson is coming on too strong.
Loving too
Like
much?
maybe a little chill, kind of helps
Yeah.
with a relationship. But I think
Yeah.
part of it too is like we've talked about this before is expectation setting in a relationship. And like my expectation was that if I was like there all the time throwing things at him, that my plant,
Yep.
it would love me back. It would perform the way that I had envisioned in my head and become like something that I would have to cut off and give to friends because I had too much. But then ultimately, what happened, as you know, is that he is now no longer with us because I threw too much at him. My
You
expectations
went
were way out of whack.
too high, too fast, too much, too
Correct.
all the things.
Yeah, I was a
So,
little
Rebecca, like perfect segue
nuts.
into our topic today on balance,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
especially in the new year, this season
Yeah.
that you were even talking about before we pressed record of, man, was the work waiting for me? And so many of us, if you're like me, I mean, I'm back on health plan, I'm back on all the things. So like are we how do you stay in balance and not overwater, go too gung-ho, too fast? And then we don't want to be like Clifford by the end of January, where
Yeah.
you're taking us out and saying goodbye to us because we're already exhausted because we went in too much too fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's why most people's resolutions plummet pretty quickly after the first of the year when they set this massive goal without thinking about, I'm saying yes to something new, and but I'm not saying no to something else. And so it's easy for your life to get completely out of whack because you over yesed.
Over yes, and maybe went in with so much energy,
Yes.
right? And
Right.
all the things, and maybe
Mhm.
weren't fully prepared or eased into it. What's resonating with me, a picture is just coming to my mind of a teeter totter.
Yeah.
And so a teeter totter, and if you're thinking about that 100%, and if you put 100% in on one end of the teeter totter, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Right? You're going to either, or
Yeah.
maybe you're up, however you want it, you're 100%, you're either up or down, but you're really overweighing.
Yeah.
And so is the goal, if the goal is balance, I think of a teeter totter that's straight and
Yeah.
balancing. And there's things, yes, things will ebb and flow with your priorities, but how are you balancing? So I think the real question that comes that comes up for me is when we're striving for A's or high performing or really strong bamboo plants that you want to thrive, and we're putting all this energy into it, is the A balance?
Yeah.
Because if you're doing all the energy and if A is getting you and you're tipping the balance here, but your things are falling off,
Yeah.
is the balance really the middle?
Right.
What's the B's and C's?
Yeah.
Like, how are we good enough? How are we leaning in? How are we doing it with ease? and
Mhm.
still making really good progress.
Right.
And
I like to think I kind of came up with this idea a few years ago, or at least, it's probably not new, but it for me it was new, of like thinking about my life as a pie, like a pie chart essentially, where I have this everything in my life that's important kind of categorically, like, whether it's work, family life, relationships, spirituality, volunteerism, you name it. They each get a sliver of pie, right? And
yeah.
so if I'm trying to make one thing my whole entire pie, I'm essentially feeding it like I fed my poor bamboo plant and getting sick to my stomach and ultimately, you know, overwhelming myself and maybe spending some time not feeling that great in the stomach
And
region.
then the other parts of your life are withering, like this poor
Right.
amethyst plant, which I don't
And
actually know what has happened here.
I know. Well, that plant that you're showing me, first of all, it's unrecognizable as whatever it was originally. Like if you were like, I need to go buy another one of these, I wouldn't know what to tell you to buy. It's a withering shrivel of sad petals and roots that had great aspirations and are now just a pile of mush. I'm sorry
This
about your
is so here's what we're striving for here, balance, right? How do
plant.
you what's enough for this to where it's a beautiful, thriving plant? And
Right.
how are we avoiding dying bamboos and dying whatever that
How
is?
did, I
And
mean,
here
your
I am in the middle.
yeah, your beautiful poinsettia. You right now are the teeter-totter because I'm seeing a poinsettia on one side of you that is flourishing and beautiful that you didn't even plan on having, right? It just kind of came into your life. And then on the other side, you've got something that someone also introduced to your life. His name is your husband. And it was his job to love on it and you
Which
supported
you
him in that, and that's
yes.
fine. But like, look at what's happening. You've got a sad poinsettia that no longer is getting your attention and love. But best wishes for your poinsettia. I think it's looking pretty good.
So talk to me about habits. So today
Yeah.
we're wanting to focus on some habit formation.
Yeah.
What's a habit? Sometimes I think that helps to even just like, how do you define a habit? What does a habit mean to you?
So your definition of habit that you found, according to Google, was good habits are those repetitive actions or behaviors you want to repeat. Which can we just call out real quick that repeat and repetitive are two repetitive words. But anyway, they have positive physical, emotional, or psychological consequences. Bad habits are those actions you repeat that have negative consequences. Some bad habits are harmless, while others can have a deeper long-term impact. So, and then if we want to talk about the more positive side of it, good habits are the ones that you enjoy, that make you feel like you're winning at life, that you want to continue doing, that you don't want to have turned into a shriveled up plant on the side. So, I mean, I think to me, that's a pretty good summary of it. But I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, you cannot place habits in a simple, singular, contained definition by any means. They're so complex and they're individual, absolutely
And
individual. What about
well,
you?
there's habits of thought that are
Yeah,
repetitive. There's habits of our actions
yeah,
that are repetitive. And I read something or saw something recently is that whatever your habits, your thinking habits and your doing habits,
right.
that's how you're living your hours. That's
Hmm.
ultimately how we live our days and our
Yeah,
weeks. And then that's how we're living our life. So our
right,
life is literally being formed by our habits that we're choosing to think and our
right.
habits that we're thinking to choosing to do. Key ingredient to balance, to that teeter totter, working like a staying at that equilibrium,
Hmm.
is what are the habits that we're choosing to think about
Hmm.
and do.
I love that consideration for both the thinking about taking the steps and the actual taking of the steps. And then
And
obviously
then the
too,
why you are
yeah,
doing it. It starts with the why, the motivation
100%.
piece. And
It's yeah, doing that audit of, okay, why am I doing this? What I like to talk about first with my coaching clients is like, what do you value? Before you even set any goals, what do you
totally.
value?
Yeah. Before you even get into any of the what and the how,
Yeah, exactly.
it's the
Because you have
why.
to have that anchor. You have to have something
Totally.
that
It's your
drives
motive.
your decision making and your steps. Like if it's not anchored in something you value, then absolutely it's a no instead of a yes.
Another perspective around kind of the same topic that we're talking about that I've also heard around habits is, and it's commitment and discipline. And so your commitment, so some days, so again, teeter-totter or a live flower, dead flower, pie chart, some days you might feel really motivated or committed to that habit, whatever that habit is. Like what's a habit you're trying to instill right now?
Well, yeah, so I can tell you that. So one habit I can tell you about that I'm very proud of that I've instilled is waking up early and journaling. But
Okay.
I think something that is new to me is I found out last year that I'm sensitive to gluten and dairy. And it
Okay.
is really hard to cut out gluten and dairy. So I started out, the year last year with a bang. I was gluten and dairy free for a long time. I felt the health benefits, et cetera. I was a poinsettia on the countertop of life. I was a flourishing poinsettia on the countertop of life. Well, then what happened though?
Expansive, feeling
Yeah,
great, tons of energy.
and all of those things, feeling great and being expansive and waking up without feeling sick to my stomach. All of those things are obviously things that I value. However, over time, I lost sight of my values because I got extraordinarily wound up in starting a business,
Yeah.
managing my kids' summer schedule with all of my goals. The move in our house because that went sideways. All of these things accumulated. There were some underlying values in there, but it caused me to lose complete sight of my commitment to making sure that I was taking in the nutrition that made my body feel good. And so by the end of the summer, my body was wrecked. I felt horrible, almost worse than, and this is a thing that actually happens when you cut something out and reintroduce it, according to my functional medicine doctor, is that when you reintroduce something like that into your body after having abstained, it comes back with a vengeance. And that is what happened to me. I felt horrible.
So to break that, so to use that exact example, so your commitment was, so commitment and
Discipline.
consistency. Yeah. Or so, I'm sorry, commitment and discipline. I was using the two C's. So it's commitment and discipline as one, and then consistency.
Yeah.
When you are committed, so you had a strong why in the beginning of the year, and then you had a process. It sounds like you had a process that was, that's when it's like consistency or commitment plus consistency equals like massive performance, right? If it's an equation. What happens sometimes is life gets in the way or things come in, and maybe some days your commitment because of other things that are happening is lower.
Right.
So then that's when it's like, man, I need the discipline of that habit to be at like a 10, right? Like for that time, because my commitment is low, or my why in it. And so what happens so many times with habits is when your discipline is low and your commitment is low, not gonna happen. And that's where we fall these habits that we're trying to form and balance that we're trying to create. So many times with clients, I'm like, where are you at? Are you not motivated right now? Or have you lost sight of the process of the habit that you've created? Because then once you can kind of unpack, is this a motivation thing, or is this a process, discipline, habit thing?
Right.
But when you're feeling like, listeners, when you are like feeling like it is a great week or a great day, check it, because I guarantee you got high motivation and commitment, and you're following the process.
Yeah. I'll tell you a huge mistake I made. So, I don't want to say that I failed because I learned. And so I did a few things really right in the beginning. I tracked. I made sure I saw something that said I could check off, I did it that day. I didn't eat gluten and dairy. That felt good to see that in front of me. I made it easy. I made sure that I had as few options in the home. I mean, my kids and everybody else are eating, they can eat dairy all day and not have the same problem. But I had to try to introduce things to them that they would secretly not know were dairy and gluten free. So I tried to make it easy for myself. I created an environment. I had a supportive husband, who was also cutting out things because he thought, well, if this is what you're doing, I think I can support you by doing it myself. I'll be supportive. We'll, eat together and all of that. Well, the thing that I lost sight of was that I thought the feeling good because of this would be the reward. I thought that would sustain my motivation. And, that's a great long-term set of like motivation element, of course. But when I felt good in the beginning, it was like, great, I feel good. That was my reward. Well, over time, that was like not motivating me anymore. I was like, okay, I kind of took it for granted. And in order for me to continue, it's like I needed to put in more incremental rewards to sustain my motivation. And I didn't do that. I just kind of took for granted or assumed that feeling good would be the reward and that would be long enough for me. That would be good enough for me. And it wasn't. So, and rewards could be anything. Like I could have taken my habit tracker and said, once I do this every day for 2 months, then I'm going to go out and buy a new outfit or whatever,
Yeah.
made me feel good at the time. But I didn't do that.
Well, and you mentioned, when did you stop the habit tracker?
Well, I also stopped the habit tracker when I stopped, when I stopped
So the
consuming. Yeah,
consistency started to go down. The
absolutely. And
consistency in your process.
yeah, it started making me feel, not only was I feeling physically terrible because my body was rejecting what I was starting to put in it, but mentally, when I would look at that calendar and I would stop seeing the check marks saying that I did it, it made me mentally feel like I am a failure. I suck at this. Why can't I do this? Blah, blah, blah. All those terrible talk tracks in my head of like, well, if I can't do this, then, if I can't do something that is going to prevent me from physically feeling sick, how am I ever going to achieve X, Y, Z? It was a real learning process for me.
Oh man, Rebecca, what's coming up for me now as you're talking about habits is our mindsets around them.
Yes.
Totally. So along with the commitment and the motivation. So our
Yeah.
motivation could be high, right?
Mhm.
Your process could be, you could have the processes and the tools in place like you outlined. But
Yeah.
then what's our mental game or mindset around, man, it's easy when it's flowing, right? And you're
Right.
doing great. But what happens the time that you make a mistake? Like you
Yeah.
just mentioned. So last week I had shame game so
Oh,
hard. So I'm now following a health plan. I have a habit tracker. I have my goals every week. 7 days I was at an A. So, and I shouldn't be at A. Like I'm like trying to strive for balance. So I have to tell myself
yeah.
80%,
Yeah.
80%, Angie, is good enough. But I made one bad meal choice on Sunday night that kicked me totally out of the game. And I'm like kicking myself on Monday morning because I have a coach right now that I'm on Monday mornings. I'm gotta tell her. And I was like, this has been a rock star week, da 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 da. And you
Yeah.
know what? I had a choice. I literally was like, I'm just gonna lie to her. I'm just gonna
Oh,
lie. Like I
you're like,
can't tell her that I didn't hit these goals. One choice kicked, or one bad choice kicked me out of the thing. And I was like, dang it. So all the narrative, the mindset. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm doing on my own mindset work. I literally had to say, and you said this earlier, I'm not failing. I'm learning. I
Yeah.
am not as far as I was a year ago. I've
Yeah.
learned some new health habits. This is
Yeah.
a journey. Own it, acknowledge it, love yourself. Like I was like, I'm enough. It's okay.
Yeah.
Pick myself back up and get back on the horse this week. So it's, how do you minimize that narrative? How do
Yeah.
you minimize the time that you allow that narrative and shame and guilt and
Yeah.
all the things to come in that we do,
Right.
especially as women? So much
Yeah.
around this is mindset. So I had to say, I was like, you know what? I had the spiral happen. Then I was like,
Yeah.
pause. I like myself. I'm learning here. It's okay. I still made what has went right.
Yeah.
Okay, here's what's went right. And now I'm going to go own up to my coach.
Yeah. And
Totally.
what did
It
your coach
felt
say?
it felt good. I talked to her actually today, so I'm interested
Yeah.
to see what she responds to. So,
Oh, you
um,
haven't told her. You
no,
haven't talked
no,
to her.
no, no. I told her. I told her on
Oh,
Monday.
okay.
We just haven't connected yet. So,
Gotcha. Because I'm curious what she
regardless
said.
of what she says or not, I owned it.
Yeah. That's
And I
great.
even told her my non-scale, because it's scale victory, right? And
Yeah.
then non-scale victories. And the non-scale victories are the habit formations. The
Absolutely.
scale is just the lagging measure of if you do
Yeah.
the right habits with commitment and consistency, you're
Right.
gonna see results. So it's more about the habit, the daily habits. And so I
Right.
was like, you know what? For this time, I feel good. I owned it.
Yeah,
I acknowledged it, and I'm not going to dwell on it today.
absolutely. That's
Move on.
a great mindset. I feel like if there was an applause track I could insert, I would applaud. Press the button and
This
we'd have,
is years in the making, though. This is not
yeah,
easy, right? But mindset
yeah,
is what's the story we're telling ourselves
right.
around balance?
Well, and how does that impact the fact that you're able to make that mindset shift? What is that doing now for the decisions you're making today and how you feel like you're going to be able to handle temptation in the future?
So I would say for this week, it shortened the time of bad choices I might have like went into for the rest of the week, or been like, again, balance. Oh, I made a bad choice. I'm totally out of balance. And
Right,
now throw it all out. It's
right.
all bad. It's all not worth it. I suck. I blah blah blah. All the things that we tell ourselves. It was like,
Yeah,
no, I made a bad choice at dinner
right.
last night.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guess what? I now get to make a good choice at breakfast and then
Right,
lunch
right.
and then
Yeah,
get right back on. So it was the acknowledgement. It was the if I didn't stop the narrative though, because it was going, I
right.
had to literally stop.
Yeah,
Stop. I'm self-sabotaging here.
yeah,
And what I was doing, the moment I stopped self-sabotaging and reframed and asked myself the question, what can I be celebrating?
yeah,
Then I was like, oh, I had 80% last week. I had all these meals. I got this much water in. I was in bed by, up by 5:30, in bed by 10. I slept great, blah. Like I still lost a few pounds. Like,
yeah.
what am I doing? Because I'm kicking myself in the but we do
Right.
that. We take the one thing a lot of
Yeah,
times and we make it's little nudges in the right direction, and it's also knowing where your energy is at for that day.
yes.
And what does balance look like today? So, for
Yeah,
example, I am completely exhausted today, like
yeah.
exhausted
Mhm.
because of things that have happened. And so today, when I got up, I did my journaling and I am like, what does a B look like?
Yeah,
What does balance look like today?
yeah,
I am not going to knock it out of the park when I have tons of energy. I'm feeling great and what have you. I have circumstances that have gotten me at like a 3 energy level.
yeah,
And what's good enough here today?
yeah.
What are the
Exactly.
habits I want? What does winning look like? Not winning like 100%, not
Right,
winning like A. What does balance winning look like for me
right.
today?
What's your personal best today?
What's my
Absolutely.
personal best today
Yeah,
with love?
exactly. Yeah,
With love
right.
to
Ab-
myself.
yeah, absolutely. I think we are activated at the core by fear or love. And if you are taking yourself with the same grace that maybe you would extend to somebody else, the same love that you would give to somebody else when they make a mistake, like think about your kid. If you absolutely chastise your kid every single time they made a mistake, that poor kid would have those internal talk tracks for the rest of their life. But you extend them grace because you love them. Well, you're functioning maybe in this case, in some ways, not you, but like when somebody has a fear of failure or they do make a mistake, they're afraid that they're so far off track. Well, it's really hard to love yourself or to feel grace for yourself when you're functioning out of fear. It absolutely is. You're not giving yourself a big hug inside saying, hey, we'll get through this. It's fine. You're still going to be fine. Everything is okay. It's not catastrophic. It's not who I am. I don't identify myself and my worth with that one, mishap.
Right.
That's how I
But
would say it.
and we tend to do that. So
Mhm.
right? And that's like our natural tendency as humans. So what we have to do is put a little bit of energy into that shift.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what's our one key takeaway here today around habits? What do you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah. There's so much. I mean, I could go on about this forever, but I am not going to. And there's, if anybody wants some truly fundamental, great best practices around habit formation, read Atomic Habits by James Clear. It is by
Uh,
far in my opinion, the absolute best book I've ever read on habits. And I think the data aligns with that. I think he was a bestseller, the second it came out. But
let's give James Clear another shout out, because I don't know if anybody's subscribed. So I'm with Rebecca 100%. Like, if you haven't read Atomic Habits, do it. If you haven't subscribed to James Clear's weekly, I Get It Weekly, it is so clear and concise. He asks thought-provoking questions and gives great tips literally every week around this topic. So
those are great. And like his Instagram too, it's like little nuggets of wisdom on habit formation. But so, that's one, I think, key takeaway or one action item. But for me, I will say that I still think that everything distills down to what you value. And if you are able to say, at this moment in life, the things that I value the most are X, Y, Z. And so my habits are going to be grounded on the fact that doing this new habit will help me reinforce my identity as somebody who values X, Y, Z. Then I think that alone can help you create goals for yourself that are going to be far more sustainable, but continue to motivate you if you can have that anchor. But what about you?
Yeah, what keeps coming up for me is just the habits are daily, and the habits are literally what shape how you live your days, your weeks, your months, and ultimately our years.
Yeah.
And so ask yourself, what's my mindset? It goes to your why. You got to start with why. What are my values? What's my big picture here?
Yeah. And
what habits do I need to form? And what's my current mindset around them? Yeah. So a lot of the times is shedding maybe outdated beliefs or limiting beliefs. And what mindset do you need to adopt? And what habits do you want to create that align with your values and your purpose?
Yeah. And
start small.
Yes.
Do not be the bamboo or whatever this is that is overwatered, and you go at it with so much energy and love and gusto that it literally, you smother it. It's like you suck the oxygen out of it.
Right.
Like, you don't need to start the year going to the gym with new outfit, new workout clothes, new water bottles, new shoes, the cute little workout outfits, the gym membership, the blah, 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 blah. No.
Right.
Wake up in your current clothes. You don't even have to brush your teeth and just move for 10 minutes, right? It's good enough. There's just the getting started small.
Absolutely.
Small little actions.
As we said in the very beginning, it's about balance. So when you are acquiring a new habit, look at what else, like really, really sit and contemplate what is going to be impacted by this. And am I willing to give that up right now? Is this the right season of life to actually try to also incorporate that new habit into my daily life? And, hopefully you pick the right thing to help you feel like you're able to make forward motion without sacrificing anything. But life gets in the way. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of What in the Well. Be sure to review, rate, and subscribe to our podcast. And if you have a topic you'd like us to cover, share it in the comments. Stay well until we meet again.